You know, for decades, Sailor Moon has been this absolute global icon. But what if I told you that the story of Usagi Tsukino, the clumsy crybaby middle schooler, is way more than just a classic anime? What if it's a perfect modern day roadmap of an ancient mythological pattern called the heroine's journey? Let's dive in and see exactly how this girl transforms into a full on goddess. So, here's our game plan. We're going to break down Usagi's journey into four key stages. First, her call to adventure. Then, we'll get into the internal battle she's really fighting. After that, we'll look at her unique source of power. And finally, we'll track that complete transformation from girl to goddess. All right, let's start at the very beginning. So, how does an epic journey like this even kick off? Well, it all starts when we stop looking at Usagi as a traditional hero and instead see her through the lens of a completely different mythological pattern. Now, this idea is so powerful. Unlike the quests you might be used to, the heroine's journey isn't really about slaying dragons or conquering some faraway kingdom. It's an adventure that faces inward. The real goal here is psychological wholeness. It's about becoming mature and complete. All those external battles, they're just a mirror for what's happening on the inside. And this really highlights the huge difference. The classic hero's quest, that's usually all about brute force, about domination. But the heroine's quest, it runs on a whole different kind of engine. It celebrates cleverness, patience, and this deep, incredible well of inner strength. It's about outsmarting the monster, not just punching it harder. So let's watch how this plays out with Usagi. First, you've got the call. Luna, the talking cat, shows up and tells her she's a destined warrior. Then, and this part is absolutely crucial, comes the refusal. Usagi cries, she complains, she just wants to be a normal kid who plays video games and eats snacks. And look, this isn't a character flaw, it's a vital stage called the chrysalis. It's this necessary quiet time, a period of hesitation before a massive change can really take root. And this connects Sailor Moon to a tradition that's way, way older. As this quote points out, fairy tale heroines were always resourceful. Usagi's transformation brooch and her magical wands, think of them as just the modern-day versions of ancient tools. The real magic has always been the heroine's own cleverness. This brings us right to the heart of the journey. Because once that call is finally accepted, the real fight starts. And believe me, it is a psychological one. The villains she faces are so much more than just your average monster of the week. The big bads, like Queen Beryl or the absolutely terrifying Queen Nihilina, are perfect examples of something called the Deadly Mother archetype. Now, these figures aren't just evil for evil's sake. They represent these powerful, sometimes competitive forces that a young woman has to overcome to find herself, to claim her own power, and to really grow up. And what's so fascinating is that Usagi's actual mom is super loving and supportive, which just proves that this is a universal, internal battle for identity. And where do you fight these internal forces? Well, you have to go into the darkness. The most intense, harrowing parts of the story, like that final assault on the Dark Kingdom, they're not just there for drama. They are a symbol of the heroine's mandatory descent into her own unconscious. It's a journey into the underworld to face her deepest fears and come to terms with her own shadow side. To become a whole person, the heroine has to integrate all parts of herself. That includes what the psychologist Carl Jung called the animus, basically the masculine traits within the female psyche, things like logic, order, and focused action. And that brings us to Tuxedo Mask. Look, it is so easy to see him as the classic knight in shining armor, the guy who swoops in to save the day. But in this framework, his role is so much deeper. He's not really there to save Sailor Moon. He is a living, breathing symbol of her own animus. He represents the logic and order she has to find within herself to become a complete, balanced, and truly powerful person. Okay, so if her power isn't just about fighting monsters, where does it really come from? The answer is buried in the show's incredible emotional depth, which, honestly, is something that gets misunderstood all the time. We've all heard the fan complaint, right? Come on, how does nobody recognize them? All they do is put on a different uniform. But what if that so-called plot hole is actually the key to understanding their true quest? See, the show isn't really about keeping a secret identity. That's what we could call the false quest. It's the external role they have to play. The true quest is the internal one. The struggle for each girl, especially Usagi, to build an authentic identity for herself, to figure out who she really is, separate from her destiny and the expectations of everyone around her. And this is where the show's realism is just brilliant. These characters are not perfect stoic heroes. They bicker over dumb stuff. They whine about homework. They try to go on diets and then immediately fail. They feel like actual teenage girls, which makes the moments when they are heroic feel so much more earned and so much more powerful. Because then, in the very next scene, bam, they're dealing with gut-wrenching sorrow or facing these insane life-or-death situations with incredible courage. This seamless blend of the totally mundane and the deeply mythic, that is the hallmark of the heroine's power. It's a strength that comes from feeling, from empathy, and from connection, not from cold logic. So now, let's bring it all home. This whole journey we've been talking about, the call, the internal battles, the power of feeling, it all leads to Usagi completely fulfilling this ancient archetypal cycle. Usagi's growth maps perfectly onto the three faces of the goddess archetype. She starts out as the maiden, clumsy, a little fearful, but brimming with potential. Then she grows into the mother, a fierce protector of her friends, her love, and the entire planet. And finally, she becomes the crone. And I don't mean an old woman, but the wise, kind, and immensely powerful ruler, Neo-Queen Serenity. And this shows us the real goal of the journey. It isn't just a simple, I win, at the end. It's what's called a regenerative spiral. The whole point is to heal and restore the world, to bring back family, to strengthen community, and to gain the wisdom to keep life going. Her final form as queen isn't about having power over people. It's about having the power to nurture and sustain all life. And that leaves us with one final thought. Sailor Moon is this perfect, modern retelling of an ancient pattern of growth and integration, which really makes you wonder, what other heroines in the books and movies that we love today are walking this exact same path, from maiden to goddess,